Hello and welcome to For Your Health. I'm Mark Crosby of Quincy Access Television. Thank you for joining us. Today we will be looking at summer safety and some summer tips to keep you healthy during what I believe is the best time of year. Joining me from the Quincy Health Department is Caitlin Pico. She is a public health nurse educator in the city. Caitlin, welcome back.
Thank you for having me, as always. Excited to be here.
Great to have you. My favorite time of the year, summer. I don't know what yours is. Do you enjoy it?
Summer and fall, I would say, are my favorites.
Okay.
Big into the hiking, so
That's right,
both of those
yeah.
seasons work for me.
Absolutely. Actually, you can do quite a bit of hiking in both.
Yes.
And we'll talk about things today that certainly would apply when you are out on hikes. Things just to keep in mind to make sure that you always stay healthy. And one of the things that comes to mind are ticks, and we will talk about ticks. We actually did a whole show on ticks.
Yes.
We will touch upon ticks and other insects that maybe interfere with a great hike.
Yes, so what we're talking about today are just some information from the Massachusetts State Health Department. These are just topics that come up in the summertime that could cause illness or injury to an individual. So we just wanted to highlight some of that information.
Very good. And I will try to not have to use my glasses. We'll see how that goes. Thank you for providing this information. And as we go through it, we'll actually start with the outline because the outline is extremely helpful for folks to know what to expect during the show. So we will start with preventing tick bites, preventing mosquito bites, water and pool safety, window safety, and then we will end with car safety. So prevention of tick bites. Ticks, I remember them, I don't remember them as a child as much as I do now. They seem to always be in the news. We talked about, of course, the deer ticks, but a recent tick, or at least recent to my knowledge, was the Lone Star tick, which is also in this area.
Not as common as the deer tick, but it is still a risk to individuals. As people may know, ticks are very tiny bugs that are found in shady, damp, brushy, wooded areas. So a lot of times if you're out in the summertime and you're walking through tall grass, you are at risk for getting ticks. They can spread different bacteria, viruses, and parasites, so they can get an individual very sick. And they're known to cause infections in Massachusetts such as Lyme disease, babesiosis, anaplasmosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and Powassan virus, just to name a couple. So you want to make sure you're really looking out for these if you're out and about, because as we mentioned in the long version of the tick episode, they can be as small as a poppy seed. So it's very hard to identify. So for some prevention tips you want to do is check yourself, your children, and your pets daily, especially if you're letting your pets out back, if you're by wooded areas. Even if you're not, though, even if it's short grass, I would still recommend checking them. Because if you bring them in the house and they fall off the dog, they could attach to you. So,
and often, pets will often lay on you or push up against you, in which case they could transfer the tick to you.
Yes, especially if they're sleeping in your bed too, as Stella does with me.
Right.
So, and it's important to know that ticks' favorite places on the body include between the fingers, the back of your knees, the groin area, armpit, neck, and along your hairline and behind your ears. So it's all areas you really wouldn't notice. So if you have somebody with you, definitely help them look behind your ears, the spots you can't reach. And where they are so small, you want to look for something that appears like a new freckle. That could be a tick. So you want to, if you find a tick on yourself, you want to remove it as soon as possible. What they say is you would take a fine pair of tweezers and go around the tick and pull it straight up and off. You do not want to do any, like they have natural remedies online. Some could be like burning it off or putting petroleum jelly around it. They do not advise doing that. It could cause injury to yourself. So I would recommend definitely not doing that.
Especially the burning. That doesn't sound. You could easily burn your own skin.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And then some other things to look. Definitely, if you notice a tick on yourself, note the spot. Note what symptoms you may be experiencing, and definitely call your healthcare provider. If you were to be diagnosed with a tick-borne illness, it would take lab work, of course, to get that diagnosis, but your local Board of Health would be notified and would reach out to you to do an investigation to see where you potentially were outdoors, what symptoms you're experiencing. So it's good to kind of take note of that just to help the investigation to help prevent other tick-borne illnesses for other individuals.
There are a lot of ticks out there. We should let people know. So I suppose it might not be so much as identifying an area, since they are in many areas,
yes.
I suppose, but it would be important to take precautions so you don't end up with, say, Lyme disease.
Yes. And Lyme disease can cause like long-term effects. I know vertigo is one. People with long-time Lyme disease can get vertigo, which is an awful feeling. So really just make sure you're preventing this. Where there are different repellents that contain DEET, which can be used on the skin. Any type of repellent you're getting, you need to make sure that you're following the instructions because there are different repellents such as like permethrin that can only be used on your clothes. So you want to make sure you're not spraying that directly on your skin. So make sure any repellents, you're checking the instructions.
I'm glad you said that because the largest organ, if I'm correct, on one's body is the skin, and the
Yes.
skin absorbs.
Yes, so if it's on your skin, especially, could seep into your pores. So anything, you just want to make sure any repellent or anything you're spraying on your body is okay for your body to take in, because you could get very sick if your skin is absorbing that ingredient.
And before we get to actually other prevention methods, and I'm thinking about clothing, let's talk about some of the symptoms that, let's say you come down with these symptoms, you never found the tick. Maybe the tick is in your hair and you never located it. Maybe it did the damage and then fell off. So go over some of the symptoms that might indicate infection.
So a lot of tick-borne illnesses, you will notice some people may have a rash around the area. A lot of times you will experience fever, headache, fatigue, sore muscles or achy muscles. There is some individuals could even get an allergy to meat with a tick bite. So that's something to look out for. If you notice you eat a cheeseburger and you're having an allergic reaction that never happened before, call your doctor. If it's an emergency, go get evaluated, call 911. But definitely if you notice any onset of this, especially in these months, you want to get evaluated because it could be an unknown tick bite, because where they're so small, you don't always see them.
Right. And getting now to clothing, I know it's difficult to wear long sleeves in the summer, especially the summer. The fall, okay. But really, in order to prevent getting a tick to attach itself to your skin, you really have to think about what you're wearing.
Yes, because ticks do not jump. It's when you come into direct contact, they transfer onto you and then attach to your skin. So they do recommend, if you can, if the weather permits it, wearing long sleeve shirts and pants, specifically light colored, and that just helps you kind of identify it. You would see a little black bug crawling on you a lot easier with a light colored shirt. I do find in the summertime, I love the sun shirts. Like LL Bean has a nice one that it has SPF in it as well. So they're nice
really?
Light shirts made for boating and hiking and all of that. So I do recommend like a nice quality shirt like that. You're protecting yourself from the sun, and it's also nice and light. So even if you are sweating, you won't overheat.
Right, right. And let's talk about another pest, and that would be mosquitoes.
Yes, so I'm sure everybody watching has experienced mosquitoes. We've all had them swimming around us in the summertime. So mosquito bites, as we all know, can cause an irritation and be very itchy. That normally is just a reaction to the mosquito saliva, and that's why it's so itchy. But there are more serious consequences to a mosquito bite. As we know, they do spread diseases and viruses, including triple E, which is the Eastern equine encephalitis, and West Nile virus. It is important to know that according to the state health department, triple E was not detected during the 2021 arbovirus season, which may signal lower risk for this year. It was a lower likelihood, but it does, if West Nile does come out, it's normally around August. So we still wanted to review some tips to prevent mosquitoes around your house and how to protect yourself when you're outdoors.
And at the top of the list, drain standing water.
Yes, so where everybody knows, any homeowner, you want to make sure you have no standing water around your home, because that's where mosquitoes will breed. So if you have anything like an old pool that you don't use, you really want to drain that, because if you don't, you're just increasing the likelihood of mosquitoes around your area.
But the poor birds, right?
Yes,
They need to drink. They need a bath. But maybe changing the water, maybe
that
frequently?
would be a good thing. Yes, if you do have a bird bath, just change that water frequently. Don't let it just sit there. Make sure I would say at least once a week. You will kind of notice if you look in there and there's little things squiggling around, pour it out and just let them all go on the grass, because you don't want them recreating there.
And don't drink it.
And do not drink it, of course. And another important thing is to repair any screens or windows to keep the mosquitoes outdoors, of course, and that goes with all bugs. You want to keep everything outdoors. As with ticks, there are mosquito repellents, and you want to make sure that it's EPA registered ingredients. And again, make sure you're following all of those directions, like how often to spray it on. Especially with children, you just don't want to be overdoing it and making them sick. And then the same thing, if the weather permits it, I would wear like a long sleeve shirt and pants. This is mosquitoes are more at nighttime or at dusk. Their activity picks up. So a lot of times in the summer, hopefully you could wear like a long sleeve at night, because it cools off a little.
Now I know the next piece of information that you will be sharing is regarding Norfolk County, but we should mention that if you live beyond Norfolk County here in Massachusetts, really get in touch with your health department in whatever state and county you live in, because
Yes.
there would be information specific to your area regarding that.
Yeah, so here on the Norfolk County Mosquito Control District provides mosquito spraying applications. They generally do this after Memorial Day, sometime into September, of course, if weather permits this. Here in Quincy, we're saying call your local Board of Health. That goes for any other of the Norfolk County areas, cities or towns. Just call your local Board of Health, see how to apply if you're interested in that. And as you said, if you're not from Norfolk County, definitely reach out to your local Board of Health, because I'm sure they have different measures in place.
We will now switch to water and pool safety.
Yes, so this is a big one, especially with children, because drowning remains the leading cause of death in young children nationally and here in Massachusetts, of course. And one of the biggest risks are backyard pools. And that's at very high risk for any children under 5 years old. So one thing, some tips that the state provides for safety. One, of course, always supervise your child anytime they're around like a pool or any body of water.
Because we should mention that it doesn't take a lot of water for a kid to drown.
It does not. So even if one rule of thumb is if you have an infant or a toddler in a bathtub, it doesn't matter if it's this much water, you always want to be within arm's length of them and never leave them unsupervised, because it only takes a couple minutes for a child to drown, unfortunately, in a small amount of water. So you want to make sure you're within arm's length. You want to make sure that and this is actually the code in Massachusetts, your pool has to be surrounded by a certain length fence for safety for people and for animals. So they say if you have like young children especially, make sure their play area is separate from the pool area if possible. And you want to make sure if your child's playing in the pool with floats and balls and toys, when you're taking your child out of the pool, remove all of those toys as well, because you're going to take away that urge for them to reach in to grab it. That actually happened to myself when I was a young child. I, of course, just wanted the toy, so I went to reach and I fell in, and luckily somebody was there to grab me. So it happens very quickly, and as the parent had their back turned, and luckily somebody saw me and jumped right in to get me. So
Well,
keep an eye
we're certainly
out.
glad about that, because
Yes.
you wouldn't be here today.
Yes. So that's a big one. You also want to make sure any like rescue equipment and a phone is in nearby reach to the pool. So that way, if you're the only parent watching 5 children in the pool, if an accident happens, you can help them and call 911 right away.
And you know, that's something about cell phones that you didn't have when,
Yes.
or that immediacy you certainly didn't have when there was a landline.
Yes, yes. And it's always good. You want to make sure that that phone's nearby. Just in any emergency, you can call 911 right away. And they also, so for children who cannot swim especially, they should be wearing a properly fitted life jacket that's approved by the U.S. Coast Guard. And that with summer camps, that goes along with Christian's law that children need to have their life jacket. So if anybody had questions about that, just you can look up life jackets approved by the U.S. Coast Guard, and you would find information on that, on how to size your child and everything. And then another important one is do not use toys as life jackets. So like if there's a child with a noodle, that's not going to help them. They need an actual life jacket that fits them.
Right, because it's easy to let go of a noodle, let's say,
Yes.
right? Whereas the life jacket is actually strapped onto you.
Yes, yes. And then so that's all mostly with private pools. If you're at a public swimming area, whether it's a pool or a beach or a lake, I would suggest trying to go to an area that has a lifeguard on duty. That always gives you a second set of eyes to help you. Do not swim alone, and also keep an eye on signs. You would notice in beaches and lakes, they'll have signs posted. This could be regarding bacteria count, because the local Board of Health and the state health department do water testing to check the bacteria level. So we would post a sign if it's unsafe to swim. So that's a big thing to keep an eye on. And also signages that will have like riptide warnings or shark warnings. That's very big, and of course, like especially Cape Cod, you'll see the lifeguards are very on top of it. They'll put out their red flags. They use their microphones to announce to all the crowd. So keep aware of your surroundings.
Right, I'm glad you mentioned riptides, because often if someone gets caught in a riptide, they panic.
Yes. And they always say, is it swim diagonal away from it?
I think you swim, I believe you swim parallel to the
Parallel,
shore
okay.
till
okay.
you're past it, till you're
Yes.
past the actual pull.
And then, because if you're just swimming against it, you're going to run out of energy, and then you could drown faster.
Right.
So definitely, that's another reason to never swim alone. Swim with somebody else, because you don't know what could happen in that water.
No, and you mentioned, I believe you mentioned panic, or maybe I mentioned panic, but that really is important not to panic, because once you panic, it's all logic goes out the window.
Yes, yes.
And then you really don't know, then you're so tied up in the panic, you just simply can't function.
Yes, and another thing is if you see somebody drowning and you're trying to help them, before you help them, you need to put a life jacket on yourself, because if you're just jumping in and you're not a strong swimmer and you get up to the person who's drowning, they're just going to pull on because they're trying to get the help, so they could drown you instead. So definitely be very careful, and that's never swim alone. And it's really good to go to a lifeguard beach, because then you have that extra protection.
And the other thing, too, is that you don't need to be swimming out too far out to really get cool and enjoy the water.
Yes, yes.
You know, you can swim, and I know it doesn't take a lot of water to drown in, but you can basically swim pretty well in an area that you could stand up in
Yes.
too.
Yes. And that's especially now when I go down to Cape Cod, I used to swim way past. I will not do that anymore. I go up to probably my waist just to dip in and run out because of all the sharks.
See, you're smarter now.
Yes.
That wisdom comes with age, right?
Yes.
Window safety.
Yeah, so this last one, window safety, so this also applies to young children. According to the State Health Department, falls are the leading cause of injury in children. And falls from a window for young children can cause very serious injury, and they're preventable. Because you think of it, a child sees a window, so if it's closed with a screen, they're going to lean against it. They think that's going to hold them. No screen can hold that weight. So some tips that are useful to help prevent these falls. If you have young children, or if you have young grandchildren that are coming to your house frequently, try to not have any furniture under a window that they can climb on, such as a table, because you know children love to climb. They like to get on anything they can. So you really just want to take away that risk so they can't get to the window. You could also open it from the top rather than the bottom. Keep windows locked when they're not opened. Always keep an eye on your child. And then one thing you could install are like the quick release window guards. It's kind of bars over your window. I know they're not always the most beautiful thing, but if you have a young child, you could always leave it on until they're at least an appropriate age where you know they can learn not to do that. But that's a nice thing to have, just because you would never want to risk a child falling out a window.
And unfortunately, you do hear of stories of children pressing on a screen and falling out
Yes.
to their death, unfortunately.
Yes. So it is very important, and it's very preventable. So just keep an eye. You don't think that's going to happen, but no one ever thinks it's going to happen to them. So it's better to just put those measures in place.
Very good. Car safety, and I guess we're thinking of maybe overheating in a car.
Yes, so this is mostly for young children and animals and pets as well. Because in summer heat, the temperature inside a car can rise very quickly. So the key rule is to never leave a child or an animal in an unattended car. Whether the windows are cracked or not, it's still going to get really hot in there. So some key things they say, so before exiting your vehicle, make sure you're looking the front seat, back seat. So you hear the horror stories where like they think they dropped their infant off at daycare, but they're actually in the back seat. That could have been from a movie, to be honest with you, but it's something like if you're a parent and you're overwhelmed at work and your kids are sick, it could be something as simple as you thought you dropped them off and they're just in the back seat.
Absolutely, and especially if the car or the vehicle is a long vehicle,
Yes.
like an SUV where there might be multiple rows of seats.
Yeah, so make a habit to always check. And I know that's, for a lot of parents, that's the first thing on your mind. But you just want to make sure, like, you get into routine and then you overlook little things sometimes. So just make sure you're double checking. That goes for your pets as well. And if you want to make sure, like if your child goes missing, they say check your vehicle, including the trunk. Sometimes, you know, like they're playing around, if it's a new car, they might climb in the trunk. You want to make sure they're not stuck in there.
Right.
You want to keep your vehicle locked, and you want to make sure your kids do not have access to the keys. I know my 2-year-old cousin loves her mom's new car. It has the double sunroof, so she's always trying to go in the car. So that's one thing we try to keep her. She wouldn't go alone, but that's one thing we have to keep an eye on.
Absolutely.
'Cause
She's
they
a kid, so she
and she thinks the window's
might.
cool, so she wants to get in there to see it. So that's one thing we keep an eye on her. Always supervise your child when they're around parked vehicles, whether it's yours or others. That's always, you want to make sure they're not getting hit and that they're not climbing inside the car if it is too hot. And then lastly, if you come across a car in the heat that has an animal or a child left alone in there, doesn't matter how long they've been there. If you're just coming upon this and you don't know how long they've been in that vehicle, call 911. If you notice that they seem to be in distress, if the dog's panting or the child seems that like they're losing consciousness, you want to attempt to get them out, even if you have to smash that windshield, but you want to do it to protect. Of course, don't smash the one in front of the child. Call 911 and try to get the child or the animal out of the car as quick as possible. I understand that's not something everybody can do. If you can't get into that car, just call 911 and they will be there quickly and they'll do what they have to do to rescue the individual.
Before we leave this show and certainly this topic today, talk about the importance of keeping hydrated during the summer.
Yes, so with any of these, like in the summer heat, your body loses a lot more of your fluids, especially if you're sweating a lot, you're going to lose your fluids. It's always very important to be drinking water to stay hydrated. So you always, I try to drink 6 waters a day. You just kind of want to set a measurement for yourself and try to stick to that every day. Because if you are dehydrated, you are going to experience like heat stroke and heat exhaustion a lot quicker than somebody who is hydrated.
And if you do suffer from heat exhaustion, you can't think straight, correct?
Yes, because that does cause confusion. So if you're alone and you have a sudden onset of confusion, of course you're alone, you want to do your best to call 911 if you think of it, but definitely if you're with somebody and you notice they're starting to be confused, they might be a little lethargic, they might have like increased thirst, definitely call 911. It doesn't hurt to have EMTs come out and at least assess them and see if they need to be brought to a hospital.
And you're basically just talking about the importance of having water.
Yes. So that is one thing I always say. If you are going out for a walk and it's hot out, even if it's not very hot, the temperature can tend to change very easily. Like the morning's cold and then it gets heated through the day. Make sure you have a water bottle on you because it doesn't hurt, and you just want to make sure you have something on you and you're just sipping on it constantly throughout the day.
Very good. You have 6 a day?
I try to.
Yeah,
I don't always, but that's
okay.
my goal.
That's a good rule. I want to thank you for coming in and talking about summer safety and sharing your information with the residents of the city. But as we know, this goes throughout Massachusetts and throughout the country, really. So
yes.
Congratulations on that, and thank you for sharing your information with them as well.
Of course, of course. And just all this information did come off the mass.gov website, so if people wanted more information, they can look on mass.gov, and all of that information is there on different safety measures.
Very good. Well, thank you again for joining me and getting this information out there, and have a happy and safe summer.
Yes, you too. Thank
you
you for having me.
And thank you at home for watching. Please, you also have a happy and safe summer, and support your local access TV station for more programming just like this.